Hello, welcome to another episode of Dealer Diagnostics. Today, Casey Seymour and I are going to talk about Dealer Divided, and we're going to talk there's going to be like 5 part to this series, but the very first one we want to talk about is how dealerships can start pitting their internal departments against each other. And that, fights with service, service fights with sales, parts and service both fight against a common enemy they call sales, right? So in this episode, we want to talk a little bit about the used reconditioning process. Is it speed versus discipline? And Casey and I have worked together for years doing this. We've had our own internal struggles when it seems like there's maybe competing motives for getting reconditioning done. So, Casey, I would like to ask you from your side is you understand obviously that technicians and service managers are paid on getting work orders in and closed and maximizing their gross margin. And obviously in the sales side, the sales department's paid on the gross margin of the equipment. So how do you view, from your perspective, how do you view the two departments getting along the very best they can? Because both you and I tour dealerships still to this day, and I see a lot of dealerships. I see that conflict between the two. And I felt like we worked out a pretty decent process, but I see a lot of departments that struggle.
Yep. Well, I always thought sales service managers and technicians got paid on how bad they could screw the sales department. That's what I always thought they could do, right?
Well,
No, huge, huge misconception, right? That's not
huge
all true.
misconception.
Yeah. Huge misconception, right?
Yeah.
No, I think, the thing about the parts and service side of the business and the sales side of the business is that they're different animals that live in different parts of the world that have different motives on how they're going to survive, right?
Right.
Sales folks, like every dollar that's spent in the shop's one less dollar of margin unless they collect it on the front side, right? So if I make a sale and I go out and throw my deal to the service manager, and I've got $7,500 worth of reconditioning costs figured in on my deal, and it comes back at $8,000. Well, I lost $500 worth of margin, right? And as a sales guy, I get paid on my margin, right? So every dollar counts, right? I get a percentage of every single dollar that counts, whether that's anywhere from 15 to 25%, somewhere in there, depending on what your structure looks like. But every dollar that comes through there, part of that's mine, right? So the concept where the biggest misconception is on the sales side versus the sales side, because sales guys are not known for their attention to detail. Let's go ahead and make that. I'll go ahead and make that very, very profound statement right here, right? But
That's taking you a while to that's like going to an AA meeting. It's taking you a while to get there.
took
I'm
me a little
proud of
while to
you.
get there. But when you think about, hey, I want you to fix A, B, C, and D, right? Casey, hey, there's E, F, and G that we need to get fixed too. All right, yes, yeah, go ahead. I never asked you how much it was going to cost. I never asked you any time. I didn't do any of that stuff. I come back in like, we had $7,500, and now you're telling me it's $12,000. What the hell? Well, I didn't sit down and specifically, clearly define to you what needed to happen. Like, I can do whatever you want to within $7,500. It's going to be more than that, or you find something outside of that. Make sure that you have a conversation with me about it. And every technician and every service manager I've ever worked with has all pulled me aside and said, hey, Case, we need to fix these things too. And what do I say? Because I got a billion things going on. Sure. Whatever. Right. This needs to get to the customer by Friday. Right. And then next thing you know, I'm way over budget and I'm going like, oh, the service department screwed me. Well, no, the service department didn't screw you. You didn't communicate, nor did you understand what was going on around you. So I think that's a big misconception between parts and service. Sales. Everybody acts like sales guys all act like parts and service are against them. Service guys act like parts and sales are against them. Parts guys act like service and sales are all against them, right? So everybody is everybody's enemy, like friend of my enemy is my enemy type of thing, and it's like this whole concept of thing going on. Basically what it boils down to is really having a clearly defined process that goes through, like, this is what it looks like when we bring a machine in for reconditioning that we've traded for. Hey, this is what it looks like when we're going to get a machine ready for quote unquote sell to a customer. Though all those things, all those are different. And I think outlining those things and going through that process is good. You and I worked through on that quite a bit together when we were working at the dealership together. And the biggest thing that we came to was there is the sales department needs to be the one making that call. And the biggest thing that we did on that, Wayne, period, the end, when it came to the trade side of it, was one person was making that decision,
Right.
not 100, right?
And
Right.
I truly think the thing that helped us the most was when you set a budget gap and you said, hey, or cap, you said, hey, this is our budget cap. This is where I want to spend. If you spend up to it, that's totally fine with me. Just don't go over it. And you spend less, then that's fine too. But when you gave us a crystal clear cap and said, hey, I've got $10,000 or 15,000 or $25,000 on this unit. And after that, stop. Don't do
Right.
anything else
Right.
until you get my approval and my approval only.
Right. And I think the only time that that particular process ever changed was once the machine got to a sold status and customer A was selling to customer A, and they were trying to figure out kind of working their way through it. Now, one of the biggest things that I think was a hard thing for our service department to overcome, working with the sales department, was I only wanted a few things. That if we had a $10,000 budget, that didn't mean I was going to spend $10,000, right? I was going to get the engine oil and filter changed, any other PM style stuff that needed to be done, right? So hydraulic fluid, filters, those kind of things, like that kind of stuff, right? But going through the evaluation process, I had that stuff built in there. If it had X number of hours on it and I couldn't see anywhere in the history of that machine that it had these things done, I was budgeting for that stuff to happen, right? That's the first thing the customer will definitely point out to you right now. Like, man, that filter's a year old, or hey, man, it's 500 hours over on service, or like you're going to get that right away, right?
Yes.
But as we're walking through those things, I wanted it to be washed, I wanted it to be inspected, and I wanted it to be all the oils and filters that need to be changed. Now, the inspection, right, was a whole different level of things. Like we had a multitude of levels. We had a sales inspection, we had a customer, green light at the time called green light, those kind of things, and winter service programs, all that different stuff that was out there. And there were varying levels of thoroughness and the more thorough it was, the more expensive it was, right?
That's right. That's right.
And so as we worked our way through those things, we kind of built a hybrid for the sales department. It wasn't like, hey, does it start and move forward? Then great, it's good to go. And it wasn't like, hey, we're going to take everything apart and make sure it's right. It was something that kind of in the middle,
Right. We went from the 50-mile-an-hour drive-by inspection
Right.
the sales guy gave you that said, hey,
Right.
Casey, this is a beauty, to us getting it in the shop and trying to do a priority service inspection where we're checking everything, load testing bearings, temp test bearings, everything. Yeah.
And we brought technicians in and said, hey guys, here's the deal. What on a combine track, you pick your poison. What are the things we absolutely have to check? And they of course they went from they went A to Z, right?
Right.
Okay, all right, we're not gonna get 26 points here. We're gonna get 13. So what 13 points do we need to make sure we hit on, right? And I think once we explain to our technicians, hey, this is why the reason that we're doing these things is because of X, Y, and Z, it made it a lot more easy to have the conversation, right?
Yeah.
If you just go in there and don't explain why, I mean, you're beating over the head with the club every time they do something. It's like anything else, right? You're going to end up with a horrible process that nobody understands why you're doing what you're doing, and you get horrible results out of it. Garbage in, garbage out, and that's what. And I felt like we kind of covered that. Yeah.
I think when we had the meeting with all of our service technicians and our service managers, explaining to them the process and the why behind the process, right? I think that helped alleviate a lot of the tension, because I think in the past they looked at it like the sales department's just skimping out on this. They don't want to spend it. They want to make all this gross margin. And then I think a couple of examples I remember you sharing in the past with, hey, look, guys, these reconditioning expenses got out of control, and now I have to wholesale it. And look at all the money we lost on the wholesale side.
Right.
We didn't have the opportunity to give a customer that wanted to buy it at a retail pricing the option to replace A, B, C, or D. We just didn't have the market. It went away. We had to wholesale it, and now we lost all that money because we over reconditioned.
Right. And I think, I think one thing that we broke out well on the process side was ABCD type of approach to it. Like A being like absolutely needs to be addressed now. It's either it's going to have a functional issue with the machine, It's a safety issue, something like that. But it has to be fixed before it goes back to the field. A B was more than likely to make it through the season. Air quotes here. It'll make it through the season, and it will get. And you'll need to you'll need to address it before it goes back to the field again. A
Right.
C was more cosmetic, hey, long term, these are the things that we should be paying attention to. And a D was, it was, busted tail light and those kind of things, like broken glass, that kind of stuff,
Right.
So, but as you walk your way through all that stuff, one of the biggest things that came from that was, all right, I'm going to pay for the inspection. I'm going to pay for what fluids and filters need to be changed. And then whatever's left over, I want to have the customer have that ability to make that decision. And the biggest reason for that was, let's just say I had $10,000 and I'd spend $3,500 cleaning it up, inspecting it, and changing the oil, right? All right. So it leaves me $6,500 to go out and it's a negotiating chip with my customer. So I can sit across from the customer and be like, Mr. Customer, here's what we found wrong. Here's the things that we address immediately because, whatever. This is what's left on there. You have $6,500. I can knock $6,500 off the price. I can give you a $6,500 credit on your account. I can give you, you can spend $6,500 at the shop, and we can just fix it. And here you go. What I found happened the most was when I did that with my customer base. The biggest thing that I found was they spent the $6,500 some way, right? Whether there's a credit to their account that they can come back in and get parts of service with, or they can, or they fix it in the shop. But 9 times out of 10, what came out was, let's just say the entire bill was $15,000 to fix everything that the technician found wrong with it. 9 times out of 10, what happened was the customer looked at that $6,500 like a gift card effect a little bit, right?
Right.
Hey, you gave me $6,500. It's going to cost me another $9,000 to get it all the way up and going. I'll just take that $9,000 and roll it in my account. I spent $9,000. I spent $9,000. I didn't spend $15,000. I spent $9,000.
Correct.
So, and what happened at the end of the day was we found that our shops were getting more money from the sales department for reconditioning at the point of sale than had we just golden hammered it at the beginning.
That's a true statement. And you know what?
Yeah.
And you're exactly right, because I can remember plenty of times when you'd set a budget for 10 or 12 or 15, the customer would see that they had $9,000 credit you're willing to apply to their account, and they'd come in and spend another $5,000 on top of the 9.
Right. Yep.
And it happened all the time.
I was going to say, the thing about it was when a customer put $9,000 on their open account,
right,
as a credit, they weren't buying gators, right? They were buying parts and service, right? That's what they were buying, right? I mean, so from the aftermarket perspective, they have $9,000 to go spend, however they want to spend it. And some of these customers had $9,000 to spend on maybe some accounts that needed us to pay off a little bit with this $9,000, right? I mean, like they helped kind of clean things up. But at the end of the day, what we found was they had $9,000 to them that was not their money. It was like, I'm just going to go out and I'm going to go get everything that I ever wanted to get now up to $9,000, right? I might buy an extra pallet of baling twine, right? I might buy an extra net wrap, dumbass, not baling twine, net wrap. But I mean, you start working your way through all that stuff. Hey, you know what? I might get on the oil program, right? Have the oil truck come out and set up an oil thing for me, because now I get the first $9,000 worth of oil that I buy, bulk oil. It's not my money. It's not my money, right? And so now you got a bulk oil customer. Like, so there's a lot of things that come into play that they may not spend on combine parts or tractor parts or planer parts, whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, you now have give them an opportunity to be a little more sticky with you on some of the stuff that comes through there on the backside of that.
And I love how our program had the deadline to it. You either use it or you lose it. Nobody wanted to lose it because they truly felt like it was a gift card. It was going to expire. And it worked out really well for us. Casey, I'm working with a couple dealers right now, and it seems like it doesn't seem like they do have some aging issues. And several of the units that I see when I look at their WIP list is reconditioning units. So in your mind, when, say, a used sales unit is sitting in recon for 20 or 30 days, who owns that delay? Do you think it should be a sales, service, parts, management? from your perspective, I know how we handled it,
Yeah.
but how would you coach dealerships that were listening to this or whatever? Who owns that delay?
Yeah. So first thing, if you listen to this, call Wayne because he's going to have the right answer for you. So, but number one, make sure you do that. But number two, what I would do is the constant. You need to have a clearly defined process in place, right? My process was I wanted every now and it was a big process that I'm not saying it hit every time, but we were really good about staying on top of stuff.
Yeah, we were.
No, we had my goal was to have that when we got the machine to our yard, it was sitting on our lot. Okay. And it might take, there's trucking things and all the different stuff that come in there. It might take 5, 10, 15, 20 days, something like that to get it in after you, like all the things that come into play. There's some extenuating circumstances that pop up in there, but you're managing the process and not the the external things that are happening there. My goal was to have everything inspected and cleaned up in 10 days. That was my goal. Now, did we achieve that goal every single time? No, but we were close. We were in that plus or minus, mostly plus 5 days of that 5 to 10 days of that 10-day goal. And what I really wanted to have happen was if we could have a machine cleaned up, ready to go, and not ready to go as like we had all the stuff done, but as long as my thing was if you could have the machine inspected and cleaned up, sitting out in the yard with a copy of the inspection inside, hanging on the window wherever you put it at, right? And you had that same copy of the inspection with your stuff that you were doing on the internet, right? All the stuff that you had listed on the internet. To me, you were good. Like you'd hit the point. If you are in and especially in today's marketplace, if you're in a position where your service department is not making the stuff that comes in on trade a priority at 6.5 to 10% interest rates on floor plan, and you're looking at $3,500 to $6,500 a month in holding costs, that's real money, right?
Yeah.
And if you have a $400,000 or $500,000 piece of equipment or a $300,000 piece of equipment, something like that sitting out there, and you get to every month you have to write off $3,500 in interest because it's not ready to go, it's not been inspected, it's not been cleaned, it's not ready to present to a customer. That's just that your whatever money you make in the aftermarket side of the business on that machine, you're giving it back you're throwing that money in the hole that you're digging on the sell side, right?
Yeah. And I think that was huge when you shared that with our team, because I don't think, well, I know for a fact, service technicians, service managers didn't look at it from that same perspective, And years ago, when interest was cheap, you're talking 2.5, 3% carrying cost, nobody got really excited about it. But at least you kept the hammer down and you kept everybody focused and saying, look, this is how much money we're losing in interest, right? When you did that and shared that with our teams, I think that gave them a whole new perspective. And now in today's environment, like you're talking, I mean, I'm talking to dealerships right now that have WIP, that some of these sales units are tied up in recon for over 60 plus days. That
Right.
makes no sense to me. It's like, and we all hear the one off, and that's what everybody wants to hang their hat on is that one off, well, parts are coming from Europe and it's taken 30 plus days. Well, that's
Right.
one ticket, right?
Right.
That's not the entire recon process. That's not your entire whip list. That's one thing, and we always want to hang our hat on that. But I think you're exactly right. I think we need to be talking and sharing with people how much interest have we paid on this particular unit in the last 25 days since it's been sitting in service.
Yeah, and I get it, man. You're in the heat of the battle. It's harvest or planting season or something like that.
Sure.
And ABC Farms calls you up and says, "Hey, my thing's XYZ is broke, and I've got a plan or I got a harvest. It's weeks, whatever it is." Those things that makes a dramatic difference. I mean, I get it. If you're a service manager, God bless them. Service managers, you're salt of the earth people, man. I can tell you right now, working with the guys that I've worked with over the years, just you're amazing people with the amount how you can manage the level of ash chewing that you're going to take when it during that time frame, right? The guys that are going to kind of nibble on you, the guys that are going to rip a chunk out of you, and you manage those people as you go through.
And it happens every day of their life.
It happens every day. But the thing about that on the backside of that is where does the sales department fall into that? Because again, I might not have my crop planted. I might not be planting a crop or harvest a crop or something like that, but it still costs me the same amount of money. It's costing the company the same amount of money it's
That's right.
costing that farmer for being down, right? And I think, but by all means, I'm not saying, hey, we got to inspect this combine before we go out and fix Farmer Fred's, combine or whatever it is. Good luck with that, because Farmer Fred's gonna be like, get your ass out here and fix it. I don't give two bleepity bleeps about
Yeah.
your stupid combine you have coming in on trade. My combine's not running,
Yeah.
and I get
And that
that.
carries a priority,
Yeah,
right? That
it definitely carries a priority, but it can't be the days of I'm gonna park all the sell stuff out back, and when we have some free time, we're gonna go look at it. You can't do that.
No,
You
no.
cannot
It's
do
got to
that.
be
Not
part
in
of your
today's
normal work
marketplace.
mix.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because everybody knows what I mean, I've had plenty of combines in my career that I went out back to go check on, and it's still got the same corn in it that I picked in September, October timeframe in May. And
Yeah.
all I need to do is open up the grain elevator clean out and get a little
And it's
ethanol out
not
there,
this tall already.
yeah, and get a little ethanol out of there and
Yeah.
go back to the office and have a little after hours party, because it's ready to go. But
Right.
those are the kind of things that, in my opinion, if it's just cleaned and it's just inspected, just that, if those things are done, we win. As a sales department and as getting our process in place, we win. And I think that's a huge step in the right direction.
Right. And that's what I keep sharing with dealerships is, I think like for us, when we had the cap and we knew what the reconditioning budget was, that helped eliminate a lot of this. Well, I'm waiting for XYZ sales manager or salesperson to give me the authorization to do these repairs. And then it's sitting and sitting. And then the service manager's like, hey, that thing's got to go outside now because I've got all this other work that needs to come in. And so my push now with dealers is look, I think the sales compensation should be impacted by the reconditioning turnaround time, and the service manager should be rewarded for reconditioning cycle time. In other words, if they get it in and they match your 15 or our 25-day window and they get that done pretty consistently, they should get a reward for that. If the
100%.
sales department
Yeah.
if the sales department isn't getting it done in that time frame, they should be penalized a little bit because a lot of times they say, "Oh, I'm too busy. I'll deal with it later. I'll come tell you later." And later doesn't happen, and we've got to get those units out of the shop to move another piece in.
I think I think there's three things that everybody should just have an open mind to, that you should just go do immediately. At a minimum, you're going to change the engine oil and the filter. At a minimum,
Yeah, without a doubt.
that's not counting everything else. But
No.
as soon as you bring it in, engine oil, filter,
Yeah.
100%, right?
Air filter.
Hydraulic fluid, those other air filters, those kind of things like that. I think those are all something else that you can look at. Unless hey, I figured in for a 750-hour service. Here's what that 750-hour service looks like. I used to spend a lot of time in the service manager's office going, hey, I got an XYZ coming in, 750 hours. What should I expect for a PM, right?
That's right.
What's that look like? And they say, okay, you're going to spend X. Awesome. So that was the first thing I did. So at a minimum, engine oil and filters. At a minimum, wash, clean out the cab and those kind of things, right? And the last part of it is inspect it, right? So whatever that costs, you should know what those. By the way, use equipment manager. You should know what those are before you even start doing this. This thing of hey, we're gonna put $2,500 worth of reconditioning in that. That's a valet fee, man. All right, so that's like you need to have a bigger view of what it is that you're doing. Like if I have a if I have a 1-year-old something coming in, right? Combine tractor, whatever it might be, I might only spend $3,500,
Right.
right? Because I'm gonna change the engine oil, I'm gonna clean it and inspect it. It's about $3,500, right? Well, that's what it was. Now, who knows what it is now? But that's what it was. 3-4 years ago. Now today, if I have a 5-year-old machine coming in, $3,500 isn't going to cover it, right? Now I can, as a used equipment guy, I can be like, hey guys, 5-year-old machine's coming in. All we're going to do is change the engine oil fluid. fluid and filters. We're going to inspect and clean. That's all we're going to do to it. Period. I want you to inspect and tell me what's wrong with it. And then I'm going to have the conversation with the customer going like, all right, you want to do X, Y, and Z, blah, 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 blah. It's all negotiated point at that. Now, there'll be some extra dollars figured into that, and those kind of things. My rule of thumb for the longest time was for a combine, and Pat Alexander taught me this way back when the day, it was $1,000 for every $100, right? So if you had a 1,000-hour machine, you're going to spend $10,000, right? You had a 500-hour machine, you're going to spend $5,000. And as the years kind of went along, I kind of crept that up a little bit, went from 1,000 to 1,250 to 1,500 to 1.2 billion. And then it was, it kind of worked its way through there. But as you're working your way through that, kind of understand what that looks like for each level machine. On a tractor, you can get away with a lot for a little bit, right?
You can.
A combine, you can't, because there's a lot of grounding or a lot of wear items inside of that, stuff like that. Choppers, a lot of wear items, stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's so much stuff that you have to pay attention to. Balers, those kind of things are different animals. Like when you have a lot of moving parts that are engaging and those kind of things, different animal. But just kind of understand what that looks like as you work your way through that, and then have a base set in there. By no means am I going to completely make a machine new again, because
no,
on a 5-year-old machine or a 10-year-old machine or something like that, like where do you stop?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like a 1-year-old machine, you get it, there's not much to fix, right? There's little things here and then. Most of it's going to be covered by warranty, those kind of things. A 5-year-old machine, again, there's a little more stuff to fix, but again, going in, when you start getting to like 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old stuff, where do I stop?
You
know what I mean? Like what does it mean for that machine to keep rolling? And I think you have to understand what that looks like. So if you're from a sales perspective, my best friend was a service manager, man.
Hey, man.
It really was. I mean, and the thing about a service manager, at least the guys I've worked with in my career, have always been their focus is on the next customer that gets up, that they're happy, right? And that they don't have to worry about the things that come along down the path and how all these different, things come into play and customer satisfaction, all kinds of stuff. Like they're truly thinking about that. They're not trying to think like, well, here's my bonus for the month. I've not met one service manager that ever thought that.
No,
they're going to tell you the best thing we ever did, Wayne, they get that inspection come through, and we had the service managers label A, B, C, D on each one of those things.
Yes.
And I would go back into them, and then some of the stuff on the B side, I might be like, on the A side, I'm like, are you sure this isn't a B, right? Because the last time it was a B, now it's an A. Like, are you sure? Like, no, I really believe we need it. Okay. Now I would never argue with them. Sure, they know more about it than I do. Right. And the last thing I want is to have a machine go out and fail.
Yeah.
Because
that's bad for all of us.
It's bad for me. It's bad for the service department. You told me went through the shop, which can mean a million things. Right.
Oh, right.
My funny joke.
I'm tired of hearing that story from sales guys when you hear them talk to a customer. Oh, yeah, it was just through our shop. Well, yeah, did it go through at 30 miles an hour? Or did it stop for a week or two and we reconditioned it? There's a big difference.
My favorite joke was when we worked in Bridgeport, there was a door on the north side, the east side, and the west side.
That's right.
And my joke all the time was like, we opened up the west door, and the east door, we just drove it through the shop,
Yeah.
And it was
it went right through the shop.
Hey, so it's been through the shop,
Yeah.
So I mean, and so, but the point I was trying to make to him was like, we've looked at it, those kind of things. We haven't fixed anything, but here's what it needs. You tell me what you want fixed.
That's right.
How much of this stuff do you want to fix?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How much of this stuff do you, because a lot of guys bought stuff in the off season and they had hired men or whatever go in and work those things. And it might not benefit the service department, but it benefits the parts department. Right. And sometimes it benefited everybody. Parts and service got together and they made it happen. But in today's world, there's a lot of different moving parts that come into play there, where it's a bigger, broader, community of things that are, it's not just, hey, I'm going to bring my combine in for the winter inspection because the free coat you're giving away, right? It's like, it's not that. It's like, I really want my machine to come in. I want you to take a look at, tell me what's wrong with it. I'll tell you what I want fixed on it, right? Because I know what I can fix and my guys can fix. Here's the stuff I want you to fix, and then we're going to go from there. And you've had a great process put in place. If you fixed the A's and B's and it failed during the season, you took care of it, right?
Took care. That's right. I took care
Yeah.
of their service call. I took care of the repair. And at the end of the day, that's what producers really want. They want a peace of mind, and they really want that uptime guarantee. They want to know that when they hit the field, they're going to have a machine that's going to be operational, and they'll be able to harvest or do whatever they need, and not worry about a silly breakdown.
And that was one thing too that like you even passed that same thing on to me. Like, hey Casey, fix the A's and B's on this. We'll cover it through the next season. If something fails on something that we fix fails, we'll
Right.
take care of that for you. And I was like, all right, cool. I want to make sure. I want you to sign across on every one of those things. So I know how Wayne is. You got to get him to sign off. He forgets. You know, gets
I do
amnesia.
have a tendency
Yeah.
to forget, but not very often. But you know what, Casey? What blows my mind is that took us a while to get it all worked out. But do you know how many? Like I just tour dealerships, and when I go to the stores, I like to go out in their lots, and I look around, and I look at the oil filters and the hydraulic filters, and I see stuff on their lots that have a filter that's been on there for 18 months or 20 months, and it's like that's sitting on their lot to be sold. How can it be? You know what I'm saying? That filter should be less than a few months old.
Yeah. 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 I think to me that's from a sales department thing. I'm happy to pay you to do that.
Yeah,
And that's low hanging fruit for the parts and service department for me, as far as I'm concerned. Because now there could be a combine that had happened that sat in a lot for 18 months, and shame on the sales department for letting it sit there that long. But that to me, that's the quickest way to sell. Like if I've got a filter that's 4, 5, 6 months old sitting in a lot, I can say, we've had it for 6 months, which then opens up the whole door of, oh, well, you've had it for a while. Let's talk about price. I mean, you can start going up, but if it's been there for 18 months, that really shines a light on a couple things. One is, well, what have you even looked at this yet?
yeah.
Have you even done anything to this yet? Have you like why is it still here?
Well, I was at a dealership just a few months back, and the used tractor had been through the shop, and that week that I was there, the customer called in and was complaining to the service manager, just dragging it through the phone because he taken the air filter out and hid it on his desk or his workbench. And he showed him a picture, all the dirt that came out of that filter. You lost the customer's respect.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one thing too. I was real big on blowing out air filters instead of now. If there are plenty of times, again, having a great relationship with my service managers. Hey, is that something we can blow out? Do we need to replace that?
Or
And
replace.
we can probably blow it out. No, Casey, this is thing, and we need to replace it. So when you built that relationship and they've blown out as many as they've replaced, I have perfect. I mean, if every time, well, we got to place it every time. I'm gonna be like, well, blow it out, right?
Yeah,
And it's sooner or later you're going to run into a situation where you're going to get your tail caught in a knot there a little bit. But if you have a really good, again, sales guys, if you have a really good relationship with your service manager, the conversation that you have and should not be a confrontational conversation. I
not
should
at all.
trust what you're saying to me, and you should trust that I am trying to do what's best for the company that you work for, and not try to get over on the sales department. Because I was raised in an era where if you're a sales guy, everybody's out to get you. You're easy, low hanging fruit that they can go get picked off at any time. The longer I was in this business, the less I found that to be accurate.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
The reason that sales service departments are confrontational with sales department is because the sales departments probably put them in a bad spot more than
More
once.
than once. Yeah, more
Probably
than once.
more than 1,000 times.
Yeah,
Right. I mean,
that old saying again. It's been through
yeah,
our shop
yeah,
at
yeah. I
30
mean,
hours.
and you got to think about technician too and service manager too. The reputation of that shop, by everything that is said out during that process, is a direct correlator back to the technicians working there. And people wanting to come do bit. I mean, all that stuff is there. So you have to be cognizant of that as a sales department. That, all right, look, guys, I'm not sitting there trying to tell you that by any means, am I going to tell anyone that this machine's been through the shop. What I am going to tell them is the engine oil has been changed, it's been washed, and it's been inspected. And here's what we found.
That's
I
right.
have X dollars worth of budget. How do you want to spend that, Mr. Customer?
Yeah, exactly. And
And
I think
that,
that was probably one of the best processes we had. because it really took the fight out and it built credibility with our service department, our sales department. And I think that was great. Case, this has been a heck of a great talk, and I know that we want to do like 4 or 5 more down this series called Dealer Divided. So, what do you say to dealerships that think that the internal labor rate should be less than a customer pay labor rate?
I don't think that's I don't think you can do that and functionally, because the service department, or I'm sorry, the sales department is the biggest customer of the service department, period. And if you're not discounting it to your next biggest customer, why would you discount it to your sales department? All you're doing there is you're shorting the profitability of parts and service both, because I've seen that before where they're like, hey, sales department gets a 15% discount on parts and a 50% discount on. You're taking away from, you don't, Mr. Sales Guy, you don't get a discount on, and you want some discounting your commission. You don't want to see that happening, right? So I mean, like those kind of things, like the only reason that you should be discounting anything is because you've not done your job through the process of making sure that your machine's ready to sell. You've communicated to the customer, hey, we're going to spend X number of dollars, and you've managed that with your sales department or your service department. Sorry. You've managed that with your parts department. You've done those things, right? You've clearly said, hey, these are the things I want you to do. You told me they were going to cost this much, so I'm accounting for this amount of dollars into my sale, right? If it's going to be more than that, or you find something that happened outside of that, then we need to have a conversation. And Mr. Customer, by the way, hey, here's what we found. How do we handle this, right?
How do
And
we
I think,
proceed from here?
right, those are the conversations you have. Not
So,
going back to your customer after you find I have $7,500 I'm going to spend, and we found a $10,000 something in here that's a bigger issue than we thought it was. Stacking 10 grand back into your deal, and somehow the parts and service department needs to come out and figure out how to make that happen. That's not their problem. Now, should everybody come together to make it happen? Yes.
yes.
But that needs to be a conversation with the customer about, we found an extra 10 grand. We'll fix the 10 grand, Mr. Customer, but it's going to cost you X more to buy the machine. If you don't want to buy this machine, completely understand that. We'll find you a different machine to go buy. But the conversation you need to be very clear, and the process you need to have needs to be very managed. I hated it. I hated having more than one finger in the pie when we were out there working on stuff. During that process, I wanted to make sure that one person was managing that and totally taking control. Was going on, because when you did that, it worked well. Now, when something got moved over to sold status and each individual sales rep was working their customer and knew what they'd have and going through that process, different animal, right? But it still needs to be managed and looked over by a salesperson, a sales manager, and a used equipment guy, making sure that all these things are working like they're supposed to be working, because I've seen it more than once where they budgeted $7,500 and they spent an extra $10,000 or $15,000. And then the sales guy's going like, so how are you going to, you need to pay me for this.
Right. How do
Like,
I get
what conversations had you had up to this point, Mr. Sales Guy?
Right.
Well,
right.
We needed to fix it to sell it. I'm sorry, I don't tell you. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes you sell for fun. Sometimes you sell for profit. Sometimes you sell for fun.
That's right. Casey, this has been a great conversation. I love it. Hey, in a couple weeks, let's do another one on Dealer Divided. Let's talk about where we left it tonight on discounting and full retail or discounted pricing. And let's talk about absorption. Is that just a service metric, or is that a dealership-wide KPI that sales help parts of service impact?
I'll answer your question right now. It's a total dealership KPI.
Yes, it is. We're going to dig into it next time. All right. Thank you very much, Casey.
All right. Appreciate it, Wayne. Thanks.
See you.